Hello,
Hello.
and welcome to
I'm
That Witch.
Episode number, who knows?
I don't know, I've lost track.
I've lost track of what day it is, what month it is. I can't believe we're almost near August. I just feel like the summer's flying by and
I know.
I don't like it. It's
It's
also
crazy.
boiling hot down here.
Oh my gosh.
We're enjoying the nice AC of the house, but it's been bad.
It has. I tried to explain, so my mom came for a visit, as Maddy knows, from my home state of Ohio, and you would think, it's still the United States, the sun is the same, things are mostly the same. Those of us who live in the United States, we know that is not necessarily the case. Things like heat and humidity vary by state. And I tried to explain to her when she came down here, because we were going to the beach and things of that nature, which is not something I normally do on my own. And I was putting on like SPF 50 like sunscreen, and she was putting on tanning oil.
Oh.
And I was trying to explain to her, like, okay, I know that, we're not like in the Bahamas or anything, or we're not on the equator, but the sun is different down here. I can't explain it, but it's different. And I'm 30 years old. I've only had one sunburn before in my whole life.
That's impressive.
I got my second one on this vacation with my mom, like to the point where it's like starting to peel. And I wore SPF 50 the whole time. Her with her tanning oil, she definitely got a sunburn. Like, she woke up the next day and her eyes were all puffy, and I'm like, what did I tell you?
Poor mama.
The sun is different in Florida.
Yeah, she regretted that immediately.
She definitely wore sunscreen the rest of the trip.
Aww.
Yeah. Poor thing.
Well, I'm glad she had a good trip.
Me too. But,
well, for our episode today,
yes,
we're going to be taking it back to Ohio. Actually.
What?
Yes!
We're going to Ohio?
Yes, Miss Ma'am, we are.
Oh my god.
Because today we are going to be talking about LEATHERLIPS.
Oh my god, I don't know this story, and it's from Ohio?
Yes.
Oh my god, I'm so excited. Okay.
Yes, I am as well, because I didn't know this until I started researching LEATHERLIPS, that this is going to be based in Ohio, around north of Columbus, essentially. So that was close to where you were?
Yes, so I grew up in the Dayton area, which is like,
Yes.
I was about an hour from Columbus, and then I moved to Columbus. I lived in Columbus for a lot of my adult life, so
it's going to be very exciting, close to home here.
I'm so excited. Okay.
So, because you don't know, LEATHERLIPS was essentially an Indigenous Wyandot leader of the late 18th and early 19th century in Ohio. And so I'll give a little bit backstory about who are the Wyandotts. Essentially, they were an amalgamation of 3 different tribes, 2 of which had been a part of the former Huron Confederacy.
Mm-hmm.
Lake Huron?
Yes.
That's how you say it correctly?
That's how I say it. I think there are a lot of words, specifically, at least in Ohio, that were Indigenous that we probably mispronounce like crazy now. Like, did they pronounce it Cuyahoga? I don't know, but we do.
Exactly. So, for the sake of this, we're going to go with Huron. They were part of the former Huron Confederacy. And after these 3 tribes were essentially decimated when they went to war with the Iroquois Confederacy, they essentially all joined to form the Wyandot. So there are a bunch of different people from different kind of groups. They eventually came together, the survivors of this, conflict, and became the Wyandot. They were essentially forced out of their land near Georgian Bay, which is part of Lake Huron in Ontario, and eventually traveled southward and settled in Upper Sandusky, Ohio.
Okay.
Around Upper Sandusky, and like traveling down even as south as Dublin, Ohio, about an hour south. Which is important because LEATHERLIPS, who was a high enough leader in the Wyandots, that he held a certain amount of status, he had developed relationships with white colonizers in what is now called Dublin, Ohio. When the Wyandots had settled north began to experience significant sickness and death, LEATHERLIPS was accused of bewitching them. Mind you, putting it out there, LEATHERLIPS is not a witch. He is our first accused male witch, I think, on this podcast.
Yeah, I don't think.
But there is no evidence that LEATHERLIPS was a witch. But it's important why do they accuse him of being a witch? So in terms of who Leatherlips was, he became a key leader. It sounds like around his 40s in the Wyandot, because people say he's either born in about 1732 and 1750. So by the time he's accused in 1810, he's about like in his 50s. But I'm going with that he was born in 1750. So he's in his like 50s when he's accused of being a witch. Um, and he became a key leader in the Wyandots, along with his brother Roundhead. There were multiple chiefs, and these two brothers are two of the main ones. Leatherlips had signed on behalf of the Wyandots in the Treaty of Greenville in 1795, which is and also encouraged cooperation with white colonizers. And just to give the context, Treaty of Greenville was essentially changing the boundaries of where white settlers could go to, essentially forfeiting over land to them. And he was even known for selling like his own land off to white colonizers. This brought a lot of problems, obviously, within the Wyandotte. So his accommodation of colonizers essentially led to this conflict with Shawnee brothers Tecumseh and, I'm going to say this wrong, possibly, Tenskwatawa, who was known as like a prophet. Tecumseh and Tenskwatawa promoted resistance to the continued expansion of the colonies. And they'd begun to form a pan-indigenous alliance to oppose this increasing encroachment upon their land out in that Midwestern area.
Tecumseh is a very popular figure still talked about in Ohio.
Yes.
And there are a lot of things, it feels kind of ironic given the context, but there are a lot of things named after Tecumseh, like schools and things.
Well, I think that everyone learned about Tecumseh maybe back when we were in school.
Yeah.
He was a pretty well-known figure when you learn about, early U.S. history. So I recognize Tecumseh's name, but not obviously Leatherlips, from the Wyandotte. And I'd never heard of Tenskwatawa, but he seemed very interesting as well. So Tenskwatawa is actually the one who condemned Leatherlips to death for signing away native lands, and again accused him of witchcraft. But however, it's widely believed that Leatherlips was executed for these exaggerated charges of witchcraft to essentially draw away attention from these true political motives that they wanted to bring these indigenous tribes together under one umbrella to fight back against colonialism, which obviously Leatherlips was pretty much open to. He was in opposition to and he was essentially saying, well, we can allow them to expand if we get a certain amount of exchange here. I'm gonna allow it. So everyone else in the tribe did not agree. He was essentially charged, and I say that loosely because there wasn't the same kind of legal system that we're thinking of now, but he was condemned to death. And it was Leatherlip's own brother Roundhead who ordered his execution in 1810. It's unclear if Roundhead took direct part in the execution. He did head the council that called for his death. So they took him pretty seriously.
Okay.
Roundhead said, honey. You're not down for the cause. So you gotta go.
Damn.
Which is pretty brutal.
Yeah.
But Leatherlips was pretty stuck in his way. He when they actually came for him, so Roundhead sent six Wyandot men to Dublin, Ohio, which again north of Columbus.
Yes.
To announce his death sentence. And he did not attempt to flee. He clothed himself in his finest attire and he presented himself to the men. There was actually one account that's been documented of someone who had known Leatherlips. It was an older white colonizer who was living in Dublin, Ohio, who tried to advocate and say he would give them money in exchange to spare his life, but they refused. And joined by the executioners, Leatherlips sang the death chant and prayed, and then was eventually killed by a strike from a tomahawk.
Damn.
Yeah.
What a way to go. Ooh.
And essentially, unfortunately, as we know from history, this murder of Leatherlips did not stop the expansion of settler colonialism in the United States. The Wyandot were eventually forced through further treaties that came after the fact. Really, in like the mid 19th century, there's another treaty that comes along that forces them out of the Ohio area altogether, over across the Mississippi River into Kansas, and then eventually relocating to Oklahoma, which is where most Wyandot who live altogether reside now in Oklahoma. So I thought this was so interesting.
Yeah.
To like throw in witchcraft in there to like essentially exaggerate and make the charges worse against him. Very interesting to me.
Yeah. This is so I think what thank you for one thing for bringing this, but also I think two things that stood out to me were one, of course, that this is the first male that we've talked about being accused of witchcraft on our podcast, but also the difference in, like, this isn't necessarily the first Indigenous person that we've talked about. We did talk about Tituba, who did have Indigenous roots with the Arawak tribe.
Yes.
And but the difference being that her accusers and the people who were victimizing her or making these accusations against her were white people, people who had that sort of inherent, like, power structure, like a power over her because she was a slave.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that that this all seemed to be happening, like, within a relatively equal power structure within like this tribe or this conglomerate of tribes who are working together to kind of stop colonialism and to stop these, white people from having that power over them. It's so interesting to me that the accusations of witchcraft came from his own people because he was siding with the people who were essentially going to be coming into power or who were already in positions of power. That is really fascinating.
Yeah. I think it and what's interesting too is when I was looking into the different conflicts and where the Wyandot originated, it seemed to be that they were actually in support of the British in the American Revolutionary War, and that they had ties to the French. So it's interesting the kind of delineation between American settlers versus the British versus the French in French Canada. And like you said, it's on this equal structure of, like, it's within their own culture that they're trying to create this alliance, this one united front to try and stop the expansion of settlers. And yeah, altogether, just like, set in the context of history, it's just interesting, like, one small snippet of this interplay of witchcraft in order to mask the real political motive. Understandably, how they wanted to have a united front, but they used witchcraft to essentially exaggerate it and make it more overblown to give them the green flag to execute him, essentially.
Wow. Oh my god, that is so interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Like,
It was a little bit shorty. There's not a lot about Leatherlips online, but very interesting documents to kind of go through, especially the supposed firsthand account of someone who was present. Again, also from this colonizer perspective, like someone who was trying to actually protect and save him, but at the same time is also part of this imperialistic expansion into their own land.
yeah, it almost, I mean, I hate to be a pessimist, but it almost makes me wonder, like, this, colonizer who was trying to save him, like, was it really a compassionate act, or was it because, like, well, we know this guy's gonna sign our treaties?
Exactly.
Was that a political act in itself,
Yes. It's like, oh, well, he has aligned himself with us. And it's definitely, it was definitely to their advantage. They knew they had an ally in him because he signed off on, like, again, that treaty in 1795, and would probably have signed off on more if not for his untimely death.
Yes. Well, wow. Holy cow. Ah, thank you.
Yeah. No,
Amazing.
thank you. We'll be back next week with another episode presented by Birdie.
We'll be hopping across the pond, and we're gonna be going back in time and back to good old Mother England. So
Mother England! I just thought of that song. Back to life, back to reality. I don't know why I was like, that's the theme song for next week's episode.
I also don't know why I called it Mother England. That's not where my family's from. Like,
True. Neither one of us originates from England, so won't be a mother for either of us. But it is the hometown of most witchcraft stories. Interestingly enough, so we will be back next week with another episode. You already know the drill. Like us on Instagram. Check out our podcast on all the different platforms. Well, actually, I think we've gone off YouTube because we do not have video episodes right now.
So we are still technically available on YouTube. There's no visual really element to it besides our beautiful logo created by Maddy.
Gotcha.
But you can still listen to us on YouTube if that is your preferred platform. But yes, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube.
And then the TikToks.
The Tickety Talks, where I am still in the process of uploading all of the stuff from Vero Beach. There's been a lot of chaos happening in life, so I apologize. I've been a little slow getting those out, but give us a follow, give us a like, leave us a comment. Our pal DJ left us a comment on our first episode. Thank you.
We appreciate feedback.
Yes.
This is still a podcast in its little fetal beginnings. And feedback is helpful to understand what people would like to hear about, what we can improve on. We love a little bit of constructive criticism around here. Around these parts, partner.
But be nice, because I'm sensitive. I'm just kidding.
Be nice or I'll cry.
I will cry, but then I will take that constructive criticism and I will use it.
Exactly. Just you sensitive girlies.
It's fine. We're in our sensitive era.
All right, y'all. We'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.
I'm That Witch is researched, written, and hosted by Maddy Guerra and Bridget Golden. Edited by Bridget Golden. You can find more episodes on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you find your podcasts. You can also find us on social media on Instagram at LoveWitchSpells or TikTok at LoveWitchSpells13. Make sure to like and subscribe if you liked what you heard today and want to hear more. Thanks for listening.